Okay, now it's recording.
Hi, I'm Ash.
I'm Em, and welcome to Saphic Unplugged. And we are going to read some Ask the Lesbians from the Ask a Lesbian subreddit. And I'm excited. And this one is kind of going to help as far as introducing us as hosts, but in a way that'll be with the stories because yeah, we haven't really done that, but I don't want to do like a boring, like, oh, here's a story time and have it be kind of like, you know.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, this first one says, how did you realize you were lesbian? And so we're going to read it and then maybe just like give our own insights. Okay, it says, I'm an 18-year-old female. I hate the whole female thing, and I've accidentally slipped up and said it because so many things nowadays say that I like. It's like woman. Let's say woman. Usually, people don't say male when they're talking about men. They say men. But I will say on this post, though, when people read them, they usually say female and male when they're reading these. But let's think about society at large. Usually, people are not saying male; they're saying females, and then they'll say men, and it's really derogatory. But anyways, if I do slip up, it's only because I've just been watching a lot of stupid content. Not like on that side of the aisle, but people react to it. And anyway, it's not part of my normal vocab. But anyways, so I'm an 18-year-old female, as she puts, and recently come out to myself as a lesbian. At least I think I am, question mark. I've been identifying as bi and then no label for years. I used to think I was just bi with a heavy preference for women, but I would never fully actually date a man. I think that I was just in combat and internalized homophobia eating me alive. I also remember coming out to my old best friend as a lesbian at 13, but then forgot it? Question mark. Maybe you made yourself forget.
Yeah, internalized homophobia.
Well, maybe it was kind of traumatic, and so she compartmentalized it until she kind of was like, oh, that's memory's gone.
Yeah.
I never thought of it again until now. That's pretty crazy. Like that's pretty deep. I mean, the only interaction that I felt toward men was fictional celebrity crushes, but they always faded away. Yeah, whenever I was reading about the compet thing, it's like they explained how those don't fully count. Just because like fictional or like celebrities, they're not like what you're gonna experience if you date men or what like men on the street actually look like.
Interesting side note. This could be a whole other fucking thing, maybe, but the celebrity crush thing is like that's like putting an unhealthy expectation on people.
Oh, I don't care about that when it comes to men. Who cares? They could stand to get they could stand to take more care of their appearance. They obviously are not affected by it because most of them barely take care of themselves, so obviously it doesn't affect them. Yeah. It should a little. But anyway, at least to motivate them. But I will say the celebrity crush thing is a little sus. I didn't have any. Well, we'll get into, but it's like I didn't even really have celebrity crushes on men either. Although, yeah, anyway, let's keep going. I generally find men extremely annoying. I always felt disgusted by them. Okay, well, those are good, like, indicators. I feel like I only thought that I hated men and maybe I'd find the one someday, but the mere thought of it made me frown. That's when I realized that I only liked their attention. Well, that could be patriarchal conditioning. So, that's kind of weird though, how people will like not like them but still want their attention. But yeah, that's part of the world we grow up in and brainwashing sometimes. I love women. They're just so dreamy and sweet. I want to live my life with a woman. Said no straight woman ever. So you're not straight. Wake up to her every morning, kiss her, be intimate with her, just everything. I remember feeling so deprived, and I never wanted something so bad. Oh, the longing.
Yes, the lesbian longing is real.
It genuinely made my heart ache. I never felt this before. I craved to love a woman and be loved by one. Everything just looks so much better with a woman. Also, when I found out sugar mommy was a thing, I literally went crazy. As someone went through something similar. Well, a couple things stand out to me. The fact that I think what's important whenever someone's like trying to figure out, like, I guess the question isn't, am I straight? She's like, am I bi or am I lesbian? And this is like a very common question when someone is coming out, when they're trying to like figure out what to do, because yes, under a lot of societies and the conditioning that happens in patriarchal societies is like, she's saying here, like, she finds them annoying, she's disgusted by them, and yet she may want to have their attention. I don't relate to that, but there are lesbians that feel that way because of the conditioning, and maybe it's not a boyfriend, but they still will look up to their dad more than they should, or care more what he says, or other authority male figures. I do see that some lesbians even have not deconstructed patriarchy in other aspects besides romantic, and sometimes they will still fall into like fawning responses with authority. Not that we have to be combative, because like, I get it, we have to make a living. Like at work, I'm not going to be actively combative, but I'm definitely not batting my eyelashes. And that's another thing. Like, lesbians are probably going to be less likely to get raises because we don't do shit like that. Well, some do, but I will not.
Lesbians don't get respect because, again, we brought this up in the last video. Lesbians, men are uncomfortable and threatened by lesbians.
Well, if they don't play that game. But okay, so let's see. So I think the answer is, I don't think she's bi. I do think she's lesbian. I do, because when you look at the parallel to how she's describing the men and to the women, it's like, yeah, you don't even want to, the option of settling down with a man doesn't exist for you. And with bi women, it literally is to where they could settle down with a man or they could settle down with a woman. That's why it's bi. Now, there are some bi people where it's not completely 50-50. They might lean a little one way, but they are still not disgusted by the other option. So I think that's where there's a difference there. And I get the confusion because I thought I was bi too, like my whole life. Well, from when I was really young, like I would say definitely preteen up, but before that. But I didn't really have crushes when I was super young. So I wasn't really thinking like that until I'd say preteen, as far as even like innocent crushes. I just like to play, and I was really like not really aware of that anyway. Grew up religious, so that, it's very easy to be stunted in that regard. But anyways, definitely I came to realizing, I was like, okay, and I thought I was bi. And it is weird because you can know that you're not straight, but if you don't have much exposure to, lesbians, it's really tough, because where I grew up, there wasn't a community. And even how I grew up, I wouldn't have been exposed to any lesbians that were just like around. But I know there wasn't a greater community where I grew up. Red state, more rural. And actually, that was a sore spot for me, because my parents were from the East Coast, and I could have grown up in a more melting pot and had more exposure, even if they were religious. But anyway, they wanted us to be, they moved, and, it changed how I grew up. But anyway, so I thought I was bi because, for one, I didn't even really, me even thinking I was bi was pretty outside the box. And I know that's probably the case for most people. And that's why it's kind of like this soft landing, soft launch for most people, because we are so brainwashed of a male-centered society. And then I was like, okay, well, that's just that side to me. And realistically, I'm going to probably end up with a man because of just, there weren't really women to date around. So it's kind of a cope that, like, yeah, I know this exists, but the norms around me were, and then as I grew up, I think it's hard too, because I don't know, I guess it changes when puberty happens or when those hormones come, because you know, people talk about crushes or whatever, and you could play in a sandbox and be like, oh, aren't they cute together? But you're not really thinking about that, right? Once sex comes into play, that's when I'm like, okay, freaked out a bit, freaked out. But I was like, oh, that's just my. What was tough for me is trying to parcel out what was the religious impurity aspect versus the aversions. Because with purity culture, like it kind of teaches you to have aversions. And even straight girls I knew, it was very hard for them to flip that switch of like, oh, this is wrong, wrong, wrong. But oh, now I'm getting married. It's okay now in the community I grew up in. So it was hard to parcel out what was that versus that. I thought that my aversions were simply my purity culture. I thought that the fact that I had to be like drunk to be with them was my religious conditioning. I had to learn the difference, which is hard. I think the fact that I grew up religious, even though I wasn't like really bought in, I still had a lot of messaging and I had to figure it out. And it took a lot of trial and error leaving the religion at 18 as soon as I could. And it took a lot of mistakes. And I've had relationships with men. And I always liked women in the background. And I hate to say in the background, but I wasn't around this option. There weren't really women to date in my area. I do feel like if I lived in more of a melting pot area, I would have, I hate to say experimented, but I would have got out of my comfort zone more with that and at least seeked it out more. It was such an obstacle just to find women and all the other fear around it. I did feel as well like I didn't know what lesbian women were into. You know, I didn't know if like I would be anybody's type. I didn't know. I actually was not bad at flirting though. Like I flirted with women. I didn't have a problem when I found one that I liked. Like I could engage and it felt natural. But one of them like ended up going with their ex multiple times. One of the other one ended up dating a dude. Um can't fault her for that because I'd done that before, but I was just like, dang it. And then there was a few crushes along the way that just didn't materialize into anything. And then the other person was like my best friend, and I didn't want to date. I didn't want it to mess up the friendship. She wasn't really my type, but she was pretty and she was there and we had a little fun. She was bisexual too, but she was legit bi because she liked men too. Anyway, it took so much like life experience to figure it out. And even for a long time, I still thought I was bi, or I said I was, anyways. It does become a soft launch. Like, I would say I've just started referring to myself as lesbian, even though that's how I felt for so many years. But for me, I felt like I didn't have a lot of life experience. Like I didn't get to have a girlfriend till I was 37. Like that is pretty daunting. And so I felt like I don't want to claim this label that I do have respect for and that I do think gets thrown around and kind of kicked in the dirt. Like I'm mad respect for the community. I wouldn't want to claim it unless I'm truly ready as far as lifestyle wise, as far as this is, we're not turning back. And I do think nowadays there's a lot of women that come out late in life that kind of throw it around and then end up going back with the men, and it just gives a bad connotation to late in life people. But the difference between me and them is I've always known I wasn't straight. Some of them, they're coming from, am I straight or am I gay? I was like, yeah, I'm bi. I always liked women. But to claim the title is like, I waited out of respect. Now, some people wait because of the internalized homophobia. Some people wait. I also, there's some aspect of like safety reasons too. And like, I have those concerns. I don't have to fear my like physical safety as far as harm, but as far as emotional, mental, etc. Claiming that does a lot to people that have family issues and stuff. And so that was a big reason why I it took so long, basically. But it's funny because it took living somewhere where I interacted with more bi people for me to realize I did not have those things in common with them. And there's no shade to them, you know, but when they would express their crushes on men and women, it seemed pretty. Now I know not everyone's exactly 50-50, but it did seem like they were excited about both. For me, it's literally like um I would only be excited about the women I liked, you know, and then the relationships I ended up in with men were the men basically pursued me and kind of wore me down. And I don't want to say that in a predatory sense because I was pretty picky, but they were kind of just like, give me a chance. Not like in a sexual way, but in a give me a chance as far as to date them, to let them take, you know, no one uses the word court anymore, but like to go on dates and whatever. And they were actually willing to do that when in this day and age, a lot of guys don't. And so I was like, okay. But my problem was I would go along, like the trajectory was set by the guy, and then I was kind of just
It was
there.
on his terms.
I mean, I guess in the sense of the dynamic, they did act like they cared about my input or things because I I was not attracted to like the alpha men. If I was, I would have just been happier in the religion I was in, and I wouldn't have conflicted with that so much. When I left, I was trying to find more open-minded men, etc., but they're still men. And so in the end, it was still unfulfilling. It was still, I didn't like it. I didn't like the straight dynamic. And even the men that are open-minded or grow up more liberal, there's still that straight dynamic that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up just being there. And then the trajectory was like, oh, now I'm here. How do I get out? And I would ask myself, but then when they would start to bring up like marriage, I'm like, oh, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
So I would break up. And it's so funny because a lot of women will complain, I can't get a guy to commit, much less want those things.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that wasn't a problem. But I do have a theory that a lot of men, well, since I was lesbian, there's the chases there, right? It's not easy. Men like to pursue and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that chase was so, they loved it. That's why a lot of men, like, they'll try to wear down lesbians because they have that messed up ideas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But I mean, they didn't know I was, but I'm saying I was harder to get, and thus it seemed more like they need to, it made it more desirable for them within the game, the chase, etc. But they don't want it for the right reasons. It's just fun for them, and it just seems rewarding to them. But they want to. It's not even like they think she's the prize. They just want to conquer, and yeah, it feeds their ego to finally get the thing, which is, I'm a person, but if that makes sense. Yeah. And looking back now, I can connect the dots on like just flirting with women. It would get me like hot and bothered. Flirting with men never did that. And I didn't even like how men flirted. And now I can pinpoint the aversions I had. But when people talked about aversions, because like later on, I wanted to research and things like that. And I did hear, you know, people's stories about aversions, but they did seem different than mine. But aversions can look differently. And now going forward with these conversations, there's more awareness. And now I am reading more that are like mine. But years ago, like I'm talking about, we're 37, you know, in my 20s, these things were not as broken down or as comprehensive or detailed, right? And so, yeah. And also, like, I felt like, oh, I didn't really get to go all the way with a woman, so I can't really claim the title. And I'm not saying that's
you
right.
don't have to
I'm not saying that's right, but there were a lot of people
you don't
that
have to have you know, sex with a woman to, you know, you can be a lesbian and not have had sex with a woman.
Yeah, I mean, developmentally, if you're romantically inclined, that's a natural like way to tell, because I felt romantic feelings before I ever did anything, and you know, that's just a developmental indicators.
Yeah. It's
you know, but
I just wanted to say this really quick while it's fresh in my mind. There are some lesbians that are like, oh yeah, you have to do X, Y, and Z to be a part of the club.
I mean, that's like kind of the messages I got. Like once ridiculous. I got to know lesbians, it's like, and I almost touched on this last time, but I'll just say it. Like, I felt like when I was trying to date women, they would quiz me, and I understand because they were running into women that were like still married and like they were going to be the secret. And in my case, it wasn't that way. I just simply didn't have the experience, but I was down, you know? And so they kind of made me feel like I had to, like, and this is partly what almost kept me semi in the closet in a way, because I felt like, wow, I'm not measuring up over here. And I kind of felt like, oh, women aren't going to want to date me. And I felt inadequate, and I did have feeling insecure a little bit. And I did feel like they were kind of projecting some of their traumas onto me, which I do understand their issues and their traumas, because nobody likes to be dicked around. Or, I mean, well, even with women, there was a dick in the background, right? And so nobody likes to be played. Nobody likes to be led on or misled. And I understood why they were kind of, and I don't think it's bad to ask questions, because they don't want to invest in their feelings in somebody that's not even emotionally available. But there was a way to do it that was like a kinder way, and a way that still could have given them the answers that they needed.
And that made you feel like you had to tick all of these boxes to be part of the club. Be part of the club.
Yeah, and it actually like set me back from getting a little more experience and getting that self-esteem in the matter. And I also felt like, oh, I guess, like, you know, I can't say I'm one until I've gone all the way. And I had this, it was weird, because I was like, I guess until then I'll just say I'm bi, because I don't want to be part of the problem. Because there are people that,
and that's a fucked up way to feel.
There are people that are bi nowadays that are claiming lesbian, and then they're still like have their foot in two worlds, and I don't agree with that. Honestly, I don't.
Yeah. I don't either. I don't either.
But I was not living that lifestyle that they were living, and I was not doing the things that those people were doing, and thus I shouldn't be punished or self-punish based on people that have nothing to do with me. Am I making sense?
You were making sense.
It's a lot. Okay.
You're making sense.
It's a long story. Sorry. I'm not trying to
and
bore anybody, but
with the lesbian community, I have recognized a lot of that being myself, being in the community for a long fucking time, since the time I was 16 years old. Now here's my story.
Yeah,
okay. So I have always, since the time I was 5 years old, I've always.
Oh, could I say one thing?
Yes.
Hold that thought. Ahead. Sorry. I didn't want to think about this later. It took me deciding to completely decenter men and only date women exclusively. And it took me really accepting that even if it's going to be a mess and it's going to be a disaster and I end up alone for a long time, which funny, wasn't even the case, but I had to accept that could happen, because again, I ended up living somewhere where there isn't really much of a community. It's annoying. But anyway, it worked out. But I had to accept that, hey, even if this is the case, we are, this is what I've always wanted. I'm going to live authentically despite, and I knew people that would tell me all these horror stories about gay dating and all this. And I had to say, you know what? I'm throwing it away, all of that away, because not to discredit their experiences, but I said, look, just because this is what you've heard, that doesn't mean it has to be your experience. Sure, you've only dated men, but you are not going in with no dating experience. Because before I had a complex where I'm like, oh, I don't have it. There's things that do translate, things that you have to watch out for. What a fuck boy does, a fuck girl in this side of the field is emulating that toxic masculinity of being a player, despite how they present, because there's all kinds of people that do it. But I'm just saying that player mentality is emulated. Those are the things to worry about, and they still translate when it comes to gay dating, when it comes to the games people play. And so it's like, okay, I need to trust that, yes, I do have experience dating, and these red flags, I can still like take those experiences around here. And obviously, if you're like texting someone and you're excited and they're barely giving you much back, whether they're a man or a woman, that tells you, so that's just one example. That's not, but in the sense of, I was like, we are not a child. We are not like, there are some baby gays that really come into it very like blind and kind of sheltered. But I feel like even when I identified as bi, I felt as part of the community. I made sure to read up on stuff, so I had my pulse on things that going on and everything. And I've been a feminist, decentering men. Like, I've been on that wavelength for even before this. And so I'm like, okay, I got this. I had to believe in myself. And like I said, I had to be like, okay, we're going in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the advice for this girl, long-winded, but like, you already know you're disgusted with men. Everything you want is to be with a woman. You're lesbian. Go do the thing. And even if you're not ready to date yet, just have that, like, embrace that and go forward. Because you don't have to date right when you realize that you're, who you are. You can still be on your own and still like blossom in your own person before dating. But getting to that self-acceptance truly is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. I didn't want to be thinking about that. I want to take in, even though
fine.
even though we've talked about our stories, but I want to actively listen. So I didn't want that.
Yeah.
Floating around my brain.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot more to my story than just that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always really, to be honest, there's always been little bits and pieces about myself that I knew. I've done my own puzzle piece putting together, looking back on my existence. And
1 second.
But yeah, I've always really, okay. I have always known, always knew. Started when I was really young, elementary school, just about 5 years old. I rewind, 5 years old. My dad and my bio dad is a piece of shit. Okay, but that side note. My bio dad had me sit down and watch this film, and if y'all know, you know. If not, I'm not going to explain it much because it wasn't appropriate for me to watch at 5 years old. But my dad had me sit and watch this movie Heavy Metal with him when I was like 5, and there's a lot of suggestive bullshit in that no kid should have ever watched. And like I said, if you know, you know. But that was really like my start to my gay awakening as a kid, because there are scenes in there where, women riding around on the backs of dragons with their titties out, all kinds of weird shit. But that kind of like was one like not it's not a good core memory, but it's a core memory I have of being introduced to that kind of thing, seeing that, and just kind of I've always felt I was different in multiple aspects of my life, not just in that way, but I always knew that I was different. I wasn't like everybody else.
Mhm.
Going into elementary school when, girls are mentioning kind of like in this, fictional characters, celebrities, all of these different things, talking about it. I was like, oh, but what about these women? Like, they're really pretty. Like,
Oh,
what about them?
I would always seek out fictional woman characters like Wonder Woman or She-Ra
Yeah.
and things like, but I wouldn't say, oh, aren't they pretty? But I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
she's really cool. She kicks butt. And they would look at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, but you were like, oh, they're pretty.
Yeah, I would always mention like, oh, what about these women? Like, for fuck's sake, when I was a teenager, one of my favorite musicians was Vitamin C. I don't know if anyone else remembers her, but late 90s, early 2000s, Vitamin C. I sat and I wrote her a letter. And because my grandmother, and this is like kind of skipping, I'm going to skip around a little bit. Because this was before I was outed, and that was a whole traumatic experience, which has to do with what this person wrote here. But I was a teenager, and I remember spending time at my mom's parents' house. I spent a lot of time there, and my grandmother would buy me these magazines. My grandfather would too, like Teen Vogue and all this random bullshit. But I remember there was a little section where you could write to like a fan letter to Vitamin C, and I wrote her a whole fan letter about how hot I thought she was and whatever. And my grandmother never read the letter. I just put it in the envelope, sealed it, and sent it. And and things like that. Spice Girls. I was really into the fucking Spice Girls, and my favorite, of course, was Sporty Spice. And
I just didn't I didn't have like celebrity crushes or anything.
Yeah.
Like that's why it's hard for me, because my indicators were, but when I would have a crush on a real person, or when I told you the story of like when I fell in love and I had crushes leading up to that.
Yeah.
But I love hearing that you had all these like,
well, there's more, that like I idolized. There was a lot of women that I did idolize.
I mean, I didn't have male crushes either. I just didn't really, but they were like characters like I told you, Wonder Woman, She-Ra, but I was very much like
Xena Warrior Princess.
Yeah.
Like so I spent a lot of my childhood in upstate New York, and I was introduced to a lot of that stuff. That was during the 90s. But
there aren't really 90s, like there weren't. Sorry,
it's okay. During that time, I was introduced to like Xena.
Mm-hmm.
That was like my major gay awakening right there.
It was a lot of people's, I feel.
Xena and Gabriella, like watching that, and then also growing up watching Buffy and Willow, and I can't remember Willow and Tara's arc when they met each other. Like that was a really big thing. I didn't watch
Buffy. Was that gay coded?
Tara and Willow were in a couple. They got into a relationship, and watching that as a 7-8-year-old girl being, noticing women. My very first kiss with a woman, or I shouldn't say woman, my very first kiss with a girl. I ran with a group of girls, just running around doing whatever, and one of the girls' parents had a camper, and it was up on bricks, and it was high enough for me to squeeze under because I was a real tiny kid. And I was able to squeeze up underneath it, and I was like, okay, yeah, cool. Perfect place to hide. And said girl that I kissed for the first time decided to hide in the same spot as I did, and we already like would be playful with each other in not normal ways, like not normal meaning gay ways. We would mess around with each other, whatever, cuddle all the time and get close to each other, whatever. And
I just didn't have enough privacy to be doing anything. As you're talking, like I realized like so much of my childhood is like my siblings were always around, and other people were always around. Like I really, and I grew up so supervised all the time that I did not have like any freedom to even play with this stuff. Like I think part of my gay awakenings were like reading books in secret.
Yeah.
I guess that would be the equivalent of like the famous crushes. Like I would crush on the characters and I would just want them to be like switch the male interest. But also as you're listing all these fictional characters, they are all like, a lot of them are just femme. I didn't even have like, my type isn't really represented in media back then at all.
Yeah. Well, as I squeezed myself underneath this camper, Charlotte showed up and I'm like, oh hey, this is my hiding spot. She was like, it's our hiding spot.
Ooh.
And I was laying on my belly and I turned my head and she was laying right up against, she pushed her arm right up against my arm. And I looked at her, she looked at me, and yeah, it was just funny. And we were just watching the other girls, their legs running by the camper. And I kind of just like sat there. She moved her arm closer, and then all of a sudden her arm was over my arm. And I was like, what's happening? Mind you, I'm 7 or 8, somewhere around there.
That's crazy.
And I kind of turned, and the next thing you know, face is like right here. And I'm like, what are you doing? She was like, just watch. And I'm like, what? And then I just kept looking at her, and then she just came closer and she kissed just one little mwah. And I'm like, okay. What just happened? And then just kind of sat there, was like, okay, processing. And then she crawled out and ran off. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And then I was still just under there and came out from underneath it, ran, and was like, okay, where's she at? Like, I want to ask her, like, what the fuck was that all about? Of course, I didn't say fuck. I was 7, but well, I guess I did when I was 7.
Meanwhile, when I was 7, I was just like getting crazy anxiety about my upcoming baptism, and you
trying to figure out why this girl kissed me. But then after that, like, I would spend the night at Charlotte's house, and we would
and we're
like,
the same
huddle.
age, so this was literally going on in your life while I'm like undergoing this weird coming of age, like Mormon shit, and you're kissing girls. And, oh my god.
And after that, like, Charlotte and I would hang out a lot, and we would cuddle, whatever, hang out, all this different stuff. And then I would hang out with the other ones too, and I guess I'll call her Chris. Chris would come over to my house and spend the night, whatever. And she was a little older than us. She was like 2 years older than us. But
dang, I didn't know we're
Charlotte ended up
play.
Yes, Charlotte ended up moving away, and I was really fucking sad. And you know, from then on, it was kind of just like that kind of made me think, oh, it's like Willow and Tara.
Oh my.
Or it's like Tina and Gabriella. What?
Yeah.
And then like after that, I kind of just, my life segued, moved back to the West Coast. And then that's when things kind of started. I started realizing more when I got into 3rd grade, 4th grade, so on and so forth. There was a point in time where I wanted to, I was embracing more of, because I'm more of on the mask side of things. I'm more of a masculine presenting lesbian. And you know, there was a point in time for a couple of years where I wanted to wear nothing but men's, you know, not men's, but boys clothes. That's how I felt comfortable. That's, you know. Also, when I was younger, I living in, you know, on the East Coast, I wanted to run around with my shirt off. I refused to wear a fucking shirt, and that was before I was developed or any of that. And I just, you know, I would refuse to wear a fucking shirt. I just wanted to run around and just
Be free.
be free. And it got to a point where my mom just stopped fighting with me, and she's whatever. But of course that changed as I, you know, puberty and all of that. But
I didn't even interact with a mask until I was in my teen years. And I think that's another reason why my awakening was a little stunted, because there wasn't barely any representation at all. Actually, I was debating on admitting this, but like this may make more sense why. Because like I grew up Mormon, and not the polygamous kind, the other kind, but my parents were very strict. Obviously, it depends on households, but there's a lot of rules regardless. But there would never have been a moment that I could see any representation whatsoever. Yeah. And it took me, like, one of my friends was in a band. I ended up meeting someone that's like mask drummer, like my type to a T. And I was like obsessed, and I only got to meet her once. So the lesbian longing was freaking insane.
That happened.
And I was like, I believe I was like 15.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what, I didn't understand everything at that point. Like I didn't pursue it. I was terrified.
Yeah. And fast forward to being a teenager.
Yeah.
Speaking of, because my elementary school, I got bullied. There was, I will say this much, I did get bullied. And because I wanted to dress more masculine, I was told to grow a dick and join the army, and my parents thought that was hilarious.
You need to stretch. I can feel it. It's okay. We can.
Yeah, my parents thought it was hilarious that I was told that, and they made it a big deal. And but anyway, growing up, I was a part of a church myself, and the churches would take place at people's houses. You know, the little services and stuff that they would have would take places at houses. And one of the women who would host had foster kids. And this is where my story gets a little fucked up. And there was a girl there that I essentially fell in love with her. And her and I interacted and would, you know, same thing, kind of just cuddle, all of this stuff. She and I just kind of bonded and just got really close. And during services, no one batted an eye at this either. She would sit on my lap or whatever, and all these different things. It was very evident that we were close. And there was an instant where I spent the weekend out there sometimes, because they would all, you know, I was, little known fact, I was homeschooled for a short time myself. And I would hang out. I would hang out.
Why was that so common?
I would hang out there, and for this, it wasn't Mormon. It was more Christian. It was Christian based, but it still was very heavily, you know, just
that
whatever.
General crappy influence.
But you know, there was a point in time where I was spending the weekend out there, and me and Aaron would sleep in the same bed. It was a bunk beds, and her and I were on the top bunk. And
wait, how old were you again?
I was
preteen?
15.
Oh, a little older. Yeah. Okay.
You know, because it went on for a little while, on and off.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So about this time I was 14, 15. I think I had just turned 15. And her and I were messing around, doing whatever. It wasn't like we were doing anything extreme. Like, we weren't having sex with each other or anything like that. It was more on the wholesome side, but it still was like, you know, making out, whatever. And
just
Yeah, and
regular exploration.
yeah, and it was towards the evening time, and we thought everybody else was downstairs, and this was before service. Like we were, you know, just hanging out together, and in her, in her space, whatever. Well, she didn't really have her own space. She shared a room with one of the other girls, but we got walked in on, and that was a whole nightmare.
Oh, that's
and
like the worst way.
she was freaking out. Yeah, she was freaking out. I was freaking out. I was like, oh God.
That's the worst way for you guys, anyways.
Right.
Like,
and then we made the girls swear to secrecy, but
of course it didn't work, right?
Okay, so fast forward to a little later on. My mom received a phone call, and this was back, I was at home, and I was 16 at the time, at this point. And my mom got a phone call, came into my room, said, hey, I got a phone call. We need to talk. And I'm like, okay. Knowing in the back of my mind that this other girl walked in on me, and the girl I was interested in, and we weren't a couple or anything either. We just, would send and that's another thing too. We would send each other letters. She gave me a shirt of hers with her perfume on it, and all of this different stuff.
It's so sad because the earlier stories, it's like cute and all this, but then when this happens, it like takes such a turn, and it just like makes me sad.
Devastating.
Yeah.
And so my mom came in after she got the phone call and sat me down and said, hey, we need to have a talk. I'm like, okay. And she was very serious. And in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, fuck, I kind of know what this is about. She was like, word on the street is that you and Aaron, I already said her name once, so I'll just say it. Aaron, we're fucking around, whatever. And I said, yeah, we love each other. And she said, well, this means, and she, of course, she was saying this all meaner than this, but, that, you're going to go to hell, right? And I said, what do you mean? And she was like, well, are you gay? Are you what? And I said, to save myself, I told my mom I was bisexual. But in hindsight, I knew I wasn't. I truly, in my soul, knew I wasn't bisexual. Yeah. But I in that moment, I said it to save myself. And this is also around the time, this is a little side note, but it'll also help you understand. This is around the time that things were getting really bad at my house with abuse and, verbal abuse, and my father,
substances, etc.
All of that stuff, getting into really bad shit. And so I told her I was bisexual, and she said, so that means that you like men too, right? Or boys too, right? Blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but she still was really upset and really like asking herself, what did I do to make you feel this way, and blah, 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 and all of this dumb shit, telling me I'm going to hell, and that, I'm never allowed to see Aaron again, and all of this different crazy shit. And like, it ended up being where I wasn't able to talk to her on the phone. I wasn't allowed to send her letters. I wasn't allowed to see her. When we went to service, we weren't even allowed to get near each other. And it was devastating. It was so hard to see her and not, she didn't even look at me. And I was just like, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? Like, am I so bad?
I'm sure it hurt her too, but she was getting same, she was probably terrified and getting the same messaging.
And it ended up being where she ran away.
Wow.
And she left, and she went to go, from what I was told, is she went to go find her mom. But I personally think they sent her away. I don't think she ran away. I think they sent her, because of that situation. And after that is when I started I was treated really bad. My mom started to treat me really bad, and calling me the dyke, and calling me all these negative things. And and just treating me like I wasn't a human being and like I wasn't a person, for being me and for loving who I love and you know, just being authentic to myself. When I grew up with her teaching me to not be afraid of who I am and to accept myself for who I am and to dress the way
you went too far,
right?
And now she's got to really rein you in, but in a way that is so extreme, you know.
It made her look bad. Okay, so this is the thing. It made her look bad, and that's something else that she brought up in that conversation.
You being lesbian would make her look bad.
Me being gay made her look bad. Me having anything to do with a woman in that regard made her look bad and made her out to be the problem, and like she didn't do right by Christ and all of this dumb fucked up shit, right?
Oh yeah, like parents care about what their peers think as well.
It's selfish.
And it's messed up.
It's fucked up because I ended up having to lie to myself for a long time to keep my mom. I had to tell myself, I had to gaslight myself into being bisexual to keep my mom in my life, because my mom was my only functioning parent. And I couldn't risk not having my mom. So for a long period of time, from the time I was 16 to the time I was in my 20s, I forced myself. And of course, I went into I had my own addiction issues, and I had my own history with all of that. And I would force myself to sleep with men. I'd force myself to be, to try and like them. But I was lying to myself, and it made me physically ill, and it made me, I had a heavy aversion to it, and I just allowed it to continue to try and save my relationship with my mom until I couldn't do it anymore. And I said, I can't. This is who I am, and I always knew who I was. It was just a matter of trying to keep a relationship, even though realistically, for about 7 years of my life, I didn't have a relationship with my mom because I wasn't there. I left my home to get away from all of that. And it took me many years to accept myself fully. And I never dealt with that internalized homophobia per se. It was just forcing myself to do things to keep a parent that at that time didn't really give two shits about me anyway, because she was too preoccupied with chasing someone who wanted to kill her, essentially. But once I made that choice for myself, once I made that decision to fully accept or fully come into who I am, that was the most freeing. It's so freeing to just say, I am me. I'm fully me, and I love who I am, and this is who I am. And if you don't like it, oh well. I don't need you in my life if you don't like it. Getting to that point of saying, I'm not gonna sit and I'm not gonna torture myself by trying to be interested in dudes to appease someone else. Because that's not who I am. This is who I am. I like women. And of course, in between that, when I would force myself to do shit with guys, I did have my experiences with women, and I have had relationships. Of course, I've had long-term relationships with women.
But I just hate how, like, it's always such a marker of, like, oh, how long have you been with women? Because it's like, does that really, and I'm not discrediting that for you, but for me, it was like, that was always held over my head. And it's like, I can't tell you that I've been in a 4-year relationship with a woman, but what I can tell you is every time I was dating a man long-term, I thought, this is going to mess up my chance to be with a woman.
Right.
I don't find him attractive. I thought maybe I dated different types because I thought maybe if I find the Pokemon of it all, And it didn't matter. It didn't make a difference. It wasn't normal to, it's not normal to look at your boyfriend and be like, could I look at this face? Oh, I can't imagine settling down with this person and having that.
Yeah.
And I was literally, it's crazy. At the same time you're going through that in your teens, I was really going through rebelling religiously.
Yeah.
No, I mean, when you got outed and all that,
yes.
It was ramping up at my home. I'm just thinking about, because it's interesting, because us being exactly the same age, it does make me think, wow, like you were going through that hell and it was all ramped up. At the same time, for me, it was ramped up like crazy, and I was going through crazy shit too. Like, so I was rebelling. Like, I didn't want to do the religious stuff. I was being more outward about it. I think that's another reason why the sexuality piece was put on the back burner for me a lot, because I was, you have to pick what fish you're frying sometimes. And at the time, sexuality was a luxury I couldn't even look into. It's not a luxury, but in my brain, I had to get out of this religion. I knew I had to deal with that other piece later, which ended up biting me in the ass later, because
and
you can't really kick the can with that. But I had to learn that later on. But in my head, I was like, I was at war with my parents because of the religion, trying to be like, why can't I just not go? I'm not trying to change you. I was respecting them. I was being like, can't we just respect each other's differences? I was worried about a place to live. If I would have been honest about that other piece, I would have been for sure homeless.
Well, and that was was something,
and that was what I know you had to worry about.
I had to make a choice.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't just about my sexuality. It was
I don't mean to reduce it to that, because being gay isn't just that.
Well, it was the state of my home. It was the environment that I was living in. I made the decision at 18 years old to leave my own home, because I would rather die on the street than die in my own home with how severe
it was scary,
the abuse and the drug addiction and the things that were happening in my home. I was a parentified daughter. I had to be a parent. I had to be a parent to a mother who wanted me to burn in hell.
Yeah,
I had to force myself to give a shit about a woman who didn't give a shit about who her child was and who her child loved, and forcing themselves to be someone that they weren't, to placate her. It boiled down to me becoming extremely angry for multiple reasons, and I decided to remove myself from the equation. But in doing so, I put myself through a whole other level and a whole other layer of my own hell by becoming an addict myself. I delved deep into that. I became, an alcoholic, whatever. And I spiraled out of control, out of anger, out of hatred for myself, out of hatred for my parents, out of hatred for the world. And that's where I began to lie to myself, and I began to do things, and I searched for love from men and women both. And every time I would search for love with a man, it was just purely out of trying to prove to my mother that I wasn't gay. I wasn't a lesbian. But in between, to help myself feel better, I would have interactions with women. I did date women. I did have a couple of different, like in high school, I had a relationship with a girl for 3 years. Whatever. There are, in between all of that, I did have interactions with women. I did still hold on to that piece of myself, but I had to go, wait. We haven't slept with a guy in a while. What are we going to tell mom when she fucking decides to come and find us? That's where my brain ended up being. And also I did shit to get stuff. I'm not afraid to admit that I did things to get things, because I was an addict. That's how things work. I'm 12 years sober now, and I'm fully, I love myself for who I am. I fully and utterly embrace that I'm a lesbian, but it got to a point I was about 24 when I said, fuck this, no longer lying to myself. This is who I am. And if y'all don't like it, get the fuck, you can get the fuck on with yourself, because I am no longer going to placate people, and I'm no longer going to make other people comfortable, because I've been in this uncomfortable state of being for too long, and I can't do it anymore. So that's where I made that decision for myself, and that was one of many. I've had the greatest decisions I could have ever made, on top of getting sober and choosing to be better and to do better and to get better for myself. And you know, it's really messed up when you have to be in that position where you feel like you have to sequester who you are, and you have to shove who you are in a fucking jar to save everybody else, because that's not fair. That is so damaging psychologically to you as a human being. It is so extremely damaging, because you put yourself through situations where it leaves you questioning your own self-worth, your own self-esteem goes, you know, and of course, like I said, you know, I was in a very long-term relationship with a woman. But I also want to say this really quick before I forget about this. It doesn't matter whether or not you have experiences with women. If you like women, if you are interested in women, if you find women attractive, whatever, you don't, even if you've never dated a woman before, that doesn't determine whether or not you're a lesbian.
But it does matter that the attraction is there, because there are a lot of people that are trying to
you know, that's what I was going to say, is that you still have that attraction, you're still interested in women.
That's the baseline distinction.
Yes, you don't have to have an experience with a woman to determine whether or not you are a lesbian. If you have that general attraction to women, and you want to be close to them, and you can see yourself with them, and you know, you don't have to have a relationship with one. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to you don't have to date a woman to exist. You know, like it took me a long time. My first relationship with a woman happened, or a girl happened, in middle school. And that was even weird, because it was like a weird fucking love triangle for a while, with her and some dude and me. And then it ended up being where her and I dated, and then her parents found out, and then you know, all of this weird shit happened with that.
But really, with you, it's like the parents were with you. The parents were in the way.
Oh, I was a bad influence
but you were
half of the girls that I would hang out with. Period. Even if they were my friends, I was a bad influence.
I would push back on that.
Well,
you were doing normal developmental stuff, and the parents were calling you a bad influence.
I was doing things that girls should be doing with boys with girls. You see what I'm saying?
In their eyes.
Yes.
In their eyes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I was doing the wrong things.
Yes.
You know, because even though I was being forced to feel like I couldn't be myself, and I had to gaslight myself into being bisexual, it was like 999.9%. It was girls, women. That's all I gave a fuck about. And then guys, I was just like, oh, I have to do this. I have to force myself.
And the have to doing it is a big piece too. Like, with how I was raised, women aren't even taught like there's a sexuality piece in general. You are literally a fucking appliance. Okay. The way I was raised, and I always knew I was different too. I was very much independent, individualistic, artistic, outspoken. Like I was a nightmare to the Mormon establishment. Okay. I was a menace to society as an adolescent.
Yeah.
And, you know, I became like a budding feminist in my teen years, learning about the pioneers and Emma Smith and the don't even get me started. And that actually was one of they call it shelf breaker. People here probably don't know what that means. It's just something that you learn that makes you go, like if you're in a religion, it gives you that questioning, like, what? This isn't right, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I was raised learning about the nuclear family. That's the pinnacle. That's what you should strive to. And even though, like, I would look around and I'd be like, these moms are miserable. They're
Yeah.
pretending to be happy, but
Oh,
they're
yeah.
miserable. I was in a big family, parentified as well, and I would think,
Mhm.
I don't want this. Like, I don't want this. Like, this is not. I never wanted to be a mom. I never wanted to have kids.
Yeah.
I knew not to voice that, but whenever I would like bring up, oh, like, can we also have a career kind of things in my class, like a young women's class, they looked at me like I was crazy. And I am 37, right? There's people that want to gaslight and act like, oh no, that was way back in the day. Like, I'm not that old. And they were still talking like this.
Yeah.
They were still saying, don't get it. Like, oh, if you get an education, get something to where you can still be a mom. And it's mostly if your husband dies, but you belong barefoot in the kitchen. And I was like, oh my God, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I ended up really focusing on learning about how to get out of this. Like, there were milestones I was supposed to hit that I was not hitting. Speaking of being a disappointment, and your parents are ashamed of you and they're using that to berate you. Like, I got that a lot as well with that piece. And so I can understand what it's like when a parent's telling you, like, hey, I'm embarrassed by you.
Well,
and you're like,
you bring up that kid thing. There was a big thing, I'm never going to have grandkids. I'm never going to have grandkids. Oh,
right.
you're not going to have kids, blah, 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 blah. And, there was that whole thing too.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
there
and
was
that's
a point, there was
not
a point.
fair to say to your kid, but yeah. Yeah.
And, told my mom that she never would, she wished she never had me and all of these different things. And there was a point in time where, later in my 20s, my mom asked me why I was a lesbian, and I had to lie to her, and this caused issues later on, and I had to fix this. I had to patch this up, but it was to save myself. I lied to save myself. I told her, oh, it's because the way that I grew up watching dad and all of these different things. And like, I don't trust, which I don't trust men, but I don't trust men and all of these different things. And so there for a while, she to help herself feel better and to help herself cope, because she's brought this up recently within the last several months. And I had to correct her on this. She firmly believed for a long time, which again, I had to correct her, that I was gay because of the way that I grew up around, the things I saw from men, my dad being abusive and all of these things. And I had to correct that and say, no, Mom, I have been a lesbian since I was 5 years old. I realized that I liked women or girls, whatever, females, since I was a child.
Yeah.
And I had these set experiences, and I sat and I told her about them. I sat and I told her about the, group of girls I used to run around with in New York and that situation. I told her about how I used to feel in elementary school and how I used to find girls cute when I was supposed to be finding boys cute, but I didn't. Yeah. I told her, she knew about Tracy. She knew about all these other people. She knew about the relationship I had in high school, which she took all of my shit. She used to find all my gay memorabilia. I would keep it hidden underneath my dresser. She threw all of that away. I bought a shirt that had the two bathroom girls, the signs, the bathroom signs, two girls holding hands, and it was a fucking bathroom sign. And I had a shirt that said "I heart girls." She threw that away. When I was 18, I ran off to San Francisco. and I bought a lesbian erotica book at a bookstore, came home, hid that in my drawer. She threw that away. You know,
Yeah.
and that is the kind of shit that I dealt with, and I had that part of me was being stripped away from me. It was being physically, you know, those external things that had to surround who I was and my identity was being thrown away.
Yeah.
And you know, I had to, that's a whole other thing. When you have to hide yourself, when you have to sequester that part of yourself, when you have to pretend like that part of yourself doesn't exist, you have to search, and you have to hide, and you have to deep dive to find any semblance of camaraderie in literature, in music, in media. I
Yeah.
used to have to sit and watch The L Word when I was in high school on with the subtitles on, and a channel set to recall back to as soon as I heard my mom make a noise or go to the bathroom at night, so she didn't catch me watching The L Word. And I would watch the second, you know, I would watch the episode they would air later in the evening. So you know, so I could find some sort of semblance of representation as you know, and comfortability, and
Yeah.
you know,
And even today,
to
it's
sit in
so
it.
like, there isn't much.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think for me too, like when it came to all of that, like I wanted to leave the religion at 14, 15 for sure. I was like, this is bogus. Um, but I couldn't leave until I was 18. I feel like the first 18 years of my life were pretty much robbed from me, being forced to be in religion I did not want to be in. I feel I there was a lot of like, yeah, I turned to books because a lot of like what could be watched was also monitored, and pretty severely. Like if it wasn't a family friendly thing, we couldn't watch it. But I found with books, because it's reading, as long as it didn't look crazy, I could actually find ways to really expand. That's kind of how I turned into not like one of those Mormons. It's kind of like a weird, because I cared about like expanding my pop culture as much as I could. I did some of that in secret. I did some of that, with reading. But I was just trying to like be normal. And I think that's a big reason why like the sexuality piece had to kind of be on pause until later, because I had to figure out what my baselines were first. There wasn't much, like, again, growing up the way I did, like, women aren't even talked to like they're whole people that could have sexual desires. It was so big of a deal that I would take care of myself. I don't want to be graphic, in my own privacy and my own properly developmental years as a teenager, mind you, not even but and I would feel like guilt for that. Come to find out, I was ahead of the curve, because most Mormon women don't even try that well into their full-blown adulthood. So power to me that I actually,
that's crazy to me, because I was doing that when I was a teen.
That's what happens when you grow up, that you are a fucking appliance for a family, and that's all you are. So the fact that I like was still doing that, that's actually shows that I was like, I cared about figuring out myself. Once I left, actually there was a lot of drama in my household about being found out about this long distance boyfriend I had. And I say that in quotes because really it was like a friendship, and then we ended up liking each other, but I liked him in a very wholesome sense. Once he started like wanting to be more suggestive, I actually did not like that. This did not ring an alarm bell to me that, hey, you don't like men. Growing up Mormon, I thought, well, this is men's carnal nature, and I'm just not into it. Anyway, but I pushed back and said, no, I'm not breaking up with him, because talking to him did kind of open my eyes in the sense to that the alarm bells of like, hey, you're in a cult, even though I knew I didn't want to be in it. It was good to talk to someone else that grew up differently, that did have a lot of freedoms and etc. And I was already questioning things, but it's like, oh, you're not crazy to question this. You're not bad. You are not crazy. And so talking to him did help affirm a lot of things. Not that I should need a man's permission, but I wasn't seeking permission. It was a sense of I already felt these ways. He was more or less saying, you're not crazy. And that did help me to have another voice. And I couldn't really trust talking to a lot of people around me. And so he had been someone one of my friends had like met online, ended up talking to him. And back then this wasn't normalized. So now looking back, I can understand why, like, my mom was so freaked out by it. However, her approach wasn't really, it didn't work, because I wasn't allowed to date people in person either, even in a wholesome way. Now, some Mormons all have different rules, but there's generally a rule of, oh, you can't date till you're 16. My parents were way more strict than that. Like, I wasn't even allowed to date at all. At all. So I seeked out, oh, yeah. Okay. So it was just, I think, it really delayed basically these markers of even um, figuring out needs, desires, etc. I would have very like, even my friendships were very shallow and basic. Like, um, I didn't grow up in Utah. I grew up in another area, and but my parents were converts. They took it very seriously. They were very strict. There's some converts that'll be a little more chill, but it can go one of two ways. Sometimes converts are even more zealous because they feel like they need to follow this to a T, and like they feel like, oh, I've been like spared and saved, and I need to, And so I was a parentified daughter as well, raised in this very patriarchal, domineering, very highly controlled religion. I didn't like the hierarchy, the patriarchal hierarchy of it all. I always was too much. I was always too, like, people would always be like, you talk too much, you laugh too loud, you're too opinionated. Like, I would always be told that you're too much, you're too opinionated. You have, like, stop talking about this or that, stop asking questions. And um so yeah, and then when I turned like 15, 16, I started like getting into a lot of arguments with my parents. I started to be like, why can't I just like not do this, and I'll still follow your rules. I'm not trying to like wild out or do these things. My mom would search my room convinced that I had to be into something bad because I didn't want to be in this religion, because they believe like, oh, why would anyone not want this, and she must be wanting to sin. They would search my room. They wouldn't really find anything. I mean, they found some music they didn't like, but she tore down this band poster that I had. There was like this rock band. The guy had his shirt off, but funny enough, I didn't even fantasize about that. I just thought the band was cool. She tore it down. Um No, this was not me being impure, actually. That's the irony and the funniest part about it. And actually, now should be wishing that that's what I was looking at that poster for. But yeah, and then, so it's crazy because, yeah, things ramped up in my life. And I actually would keep talking to this boy in secret. But funny enough, when it became like he wanted more, it did turn me off, But that came later on. Like once I was 18 and I left, I continued to talk to him. I acted like I stopped talking to him, but I continued to talk to him. And then it ended up running its course. Funny enough, if they just would have left it alone. But anyway, that's why when you tell someone to like give things up, it usually like they grapple on more, but for better or worse, mostly worse, but usually, anyways, probably the usual outcome. But anyway, so I ended up still talking to him. It ran its course. Did I date women then? No. I ended up getting a boyfriend. I ended up, but I wasn't prepared for the, like when I left the religion, I ended up learning how regular society is very patriarchal, how much there's Christian nationalism. I mean, I knew there are other things out there, but I really didn't realize how much of society is like this. And it was very triggering. And I had to realize, oh my God, like I have to fight this again. I ended up trying to date, like I said, I tried to date like a guy that was different, you know. I was trying to break these generational cycles. And not that them I didn't have generations in with that religion. My parents were converts, but they had still been, there were still traditional things, whatever, which is why they're drawn to that religion. And so I was, you know, moving out, dating, um, living with men without being married. This was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was so distracted by the fact that I was doing all these things, and it was my path I had to do. I wasn't allowed to make a lot of these decisions in early developmental years, so it kind of stunted me. I spiraled out too, tried things I wouldn't normally try, tried some substances, drank too much, because I had such control growing, or I everything was so controlled growing up that I wasn't really allowed to make these little mistakes as I went. So when I was, you know, basically spiraling out of, after like my first more long-term relationship bombed out, I really spiraled. That's when I really went a little off the deep end, but I came back. But it was just like I was deconstructing all of those religious things. I was trying to figure out what regular society was like at the same time. I was trying to, and like I said, I knew I was, well, I knew I wasn't straight, but I was like, oh, I'm just bi. That's that part of me that it always got put on the back burner because, again, I didn't really have a lot of dating options. And it was a lot just to figure out dating in this normal context that I was trying to build, that tackling that was like so much down the pipeline. I don't know if that makes sense, but
That
like
makes sense.
I couldn't handle it all at once. I had to.
There was so much you were already trying to do, and it was like you had to tackle one thing at a time, and it just 15 different facets of everything. I know how that feels.
But I also did, like, something that really rocked my world was I basically, you know, I'm just talking about it, but obviously my biggest gay awakening was falling in love with someone, and the circumstances weren't ideal. And when I first started talking to her, it was like an off and on thing. We would always come back to each other. We had some distance at first, but then it became more because I ended up moving. And so we would just, like, whenever we were single, we would reconnect. And then it became, even when we weren't single, we would, hey, things are not always perfect, okay?
It's okay.
I would have never.
It's your experience, and that's okay.
I would have never done that for a man, okay? I will say this. I would have, because she meant so much to me. Like, it was different. I'm not saying it's okay, but like I couldn't help myself. Mm-hmm. And that should have been bing bing, you're gay. But like I couldn't resist her. And I wasn't one to be a cheater. I wasn't one to, but anyway, so but we had distance, so this wasn't like physical, but it's still because you're flirting, you're sending things, you're talking dirty, whatever it is. So it did breach that line, but mostly I did that when I was single. But there was a point where I wasn't single anymore. I was in a long-term relationship. I wasn't like, things have been fine, but there was something missing I couldn't articulate, and then they wanted to go further down these milestones, like, we should talk about getting engaged. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to get out of this. Well, anyway, she hits me up. I'm like, talking to her. I ended up having to break that off because my feelings were so fucking strong. I couldn't simultaneously do that and this. I doubled down, regretted it from the second I did. I made the mistake of deleting her contact info. It haunted me through many years later. And meanwhile, if I ever like lost contact with a dude, it wasn't another thought in my mind. These are the things that you just have to learn the messy way, because it's like I literally could like it really deeply hurt me. She has a theory about it that it makes sense. We'll talk about that later. But I was literally just like, oh my God, like I am scarred. Um and I continued in that relationship, realized no, and then had to like move and all this. And it was just like I had regretted that decision, because when I first started talking to her, we were at least in the same state. I ended up moving out of that state. It ended up being impossible. And actually, she was really upset when she heard I moved. And I remember being surprised. I didn't think she cared that much. And she was just like, what the fuck? And I was like, well, I mean, like, you seem preoccupied with what you got going. She's like, well, you're fucking gonna date a dude anyway. And it was that classic, but I was the bad guy. Okay. But coming from the conditioning I was coming from and all of that, I wouldn't have, I, I, I really wanted to drop everything and try it with her. But financially, I wasn't in the place. And yeah, I didn't know how to overcome it all. And looking back on it now, it bugs me. It bugs me sometimes because I'm like, even if I didn't do that, that should have indicated to me. But no, I ended up breaking out of that relationship, being single for a while, yada yada yada.
Well, let's look at it this.
And
Let's look at it this way, though. To fast forward to where you are now, that did help shape you into who you are now, and helped you come more into who you are.
well, yeah, it did solidify that, oh, these aren't just fantasies. This is a real person that you have feelings for. She has feelings for you. It did help in the sense of, before I'd be like, oh, I'm always crushing on the wrong people. They don't like me back the same way. There's always that.
And it helps you see that there wasn't anything wrong with you.
Yeah.
And you weren't bad or wrong for having these feelings. And it was transformative for you, even though it did crush you and it caused you to, feel the ways that you did later on. Mm-hmm. Up until this point, it did help shape you and realize fully, like, hey, this is who I am.
Well, it wasn't a fear of being bad or wrong. It was, I didn't really have a problem with it. In that way, it's just like my family issues, and I was in a relationship,
or like
so
you were,
I had
that's
that
not what
guilt.
I meant. It was more or less,
I guess I was like bad for doing that while in a relationship. I'd guilt around that. So that definitely made me have to cut it off.
Yeah. Which that in and of itself sucks that you had to feel that way.
And I broke it
Mhm.
off with her when really I really wanted to break it off with the boyfriend.
Right. And
But I was living with them at the time.
similar experience.
No support otherwise. Like,
yeah. With my one extremely long term, I'd say extreme, it's not even really extreme, but my very long term relationship, kind of same thing. I was friends with her first when I was a kid, whatever. History does its thing. Lost contact for a while, gained contact when I was in my 20s, and rekindled our friendship, and then things kind of just went from there, and I was with her for 10
I wasn't
years,
a friend to her first. Like, we literally
I'm just saying, that it's still, it's
I
like,
think that's,
there's that,
for me, the distinction matters because it helped awaken that, because there was, the reason was, like, it was purely, we clicked in that way, and it was purely like, it was all there. It wasn't like, when, not that being friends is wrong, I'm just saying in my experience, the friends of the dudes, and then it became a relationship. It was good to have it just hit me like a train with this woman, because it's like, oh, like, they're always like, when and it was like weak. She wasn't like who I'd end up with in that regard, but it was like, oh, it did click and it did feel like that. And sometimes, there's nothing wrong with meeting as friends and it growing. It's just because my experiences when that was dudes was negative. It was good to have that instant bond with a woman and have it be romantic right away to wake me up, because I was in that psychosis. You know what I mean? It was like these patterns kept repeating, and it disrupted the pattern for what I was going through at the time. And I feel like, like I said, there's nothing wrong with starting as friends, but in my experience, I needed that slap in the face.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. Yes, there's nothing wrong with
that. At that point in my life,
yes, yeah. There's nothing wrong with that by any means, because sometimes that's what it takes for people.
Yeah. And it's like when we met, it was like a fusion. It's like it hit me right away, but I kind of slowed it down, and I kind of was like, I need to really get to know her. But I had that initial spark. I had that initial magnetism, attraction.
It was a different sense of when you know.
It was the complete of that, but I had to slow down because I had a tendency to rush things. And when I met you, I just knew I had to do it differently. But when I met you, it was instant, that feeling. And I just had to make sure, because I'm older now, and I wanted to make sure we actually were compatible.
Well, and I was,
our life situations were gonna
shit, and
we both were.
Going through healing from that, 10-year bullshit that I dealt with and whatever. But it's really interesting how life leads you down different paths, and how you can sit in this very moment right now on July 6th and you can sit and you can think back on all of these things that transformed you into who you are, and to retell that from this perspective as a 37-year-old woman sitting here finally living your truth, being with a woman, being and just marvel at the fact that you had these experiences, just as I've had all of my experiences, and I've dealt with abusive relationships, I've dealt with all these other things, and I have had my own loves and things that kind of turned, that slapped me in the face and helped me realize this is who I was. All of these different steps, being two separate people, having these experiences and being able to come together and accept that. That's something that I've wanted to say on this fucking format is something that is wrong in gay relationships, straight relationships, lesbian relationships, any relationship as a whole, romantic relationship, is the fact that people don't accept the fact that their partner is a human fucking being with their own past and their own experiences with relationships, and when they talk about them, it doesn't mean that they miss that person or they want to be with that person. They're just, they trust you enough and they feel safe with you enough to even divulge that information.
Yeah.
And then you get those people who are insecure and jealous and have these issues, these jealousy problems, where they sit and they say, oh, well, I must not be good enough and you should go back and be with your fucking boyfriend from 15 years ago. You know, they get that insecurity, or that girlfriend, or whoever the fuck, whoever you're dealing with.
Right.
You know, and they don't sit for a second and take themselves out of that and say, hey, my partner is just as human as I am, and they have had just as much of a human experience as I have, and it is absolutely okay that they've had the experiences they've had, and they have had the partners they've had. Because you know what? Each partner that you have had has taught you different things about yourself, different things about how you won't allow yourself to be treated, how you don't want to treat others, mistakes you've made in those relationships that you don't want to carry into other relationships. You know, it should not be a bad thing that your partner feels safe with you enough to talk to you about those things, and confident enough in your relationship and secure enough in your relationship to be able to share those things with you. And I really think people need to just take themselves out of themselves for a minute, and not be so full of jealousy and anger. That's their own insecurity. It's a them problem. It's not the other person. You know, it's okay that you can be two separate people, but still come together and be in a happy, healthy, loving relationship, and just accept that you guys were separate people with your separate lives before you met. And that's how everybody starts. You know, everybody starts as strangers, and it all that matters is how you come together, and how you connect, and how you see each other, and where you meet each other in the moment. And to maintain that peace and that acceptance and that understanding, I think it's really important that people take themselves out of themselves and see things externally. Put yourself in other people's shoes. It's like judging someone for growing up in an abusive household and saying immediately that they're this certain way, but they could have very well have sat and gone through therapy to heal and become a better person. Well, it matters who
someone is today. You know, I've met people that were very much unhealed, but their life. But what I mean is, don't
pass judgment without getting to know someone and getting a feel for someone. Don't immediately say, your first thought of hearing someone say, "Oh, my ex," immediately when someone's partner hears my ex, they instantly
a lot of people have issues with that. I sat and watched
this with my mother and my stepfather. My mom will say something about my bio dad, just to speak about an experience she had that may, you know, she's not speaking in a longing way like she wants to be with him. She's speaking in a way that is like, oh, this affected me, this made me feel this way. And he goes, oh, you're talking about him again. And it's like, no, she's sharing. I've had to stop. And I've had to stop the conversation and say, she's speaking to you in safety and security from her experience with someone who abused her. She's not speaking in a longing, loving way by any means. Trust me.
Well, also something that gets misconstrued a lot. I come from a community where people really pride in having lack of experience and marrying young, and you're in all this. That doesn't guarantee you're going to be with somebody, because usually those people, once their brain develops, they realize I haven't lived and they want to go and explore. So the funny thing is, people think being with someone with less experience means security and means that you're going to, you know, stay together and you don't have to compete against any person or whatever. That's all false. Like, I would rather meet someone having lived experience, you know, having all that under my belt.
This is something that's important too, is that when you get to be our ages, you know, something else that is really important to remember too is that it gets to a point where you like, for example, if you don't have experience dating women and you find a woman that you click with and that you vibe with, whatever, there should never be that, at this age, there is no fear of missing out, because I've experienced a lot. There's nothing that I've missed out on, and I never will feel that way. Even though I was in a 10-year fucked up relationship, I'm never gonna feel like I missed out on anything, because I didn't fucking miss out on anything.
Well, I do want to make one correction, because I say I haven't dated women. That could be misconstrued. Like, I talked to them, I flirted with them, I was on the apps setting up dates or things like that. But when I say I haven't dated them, I mean I didn't have like even short-term relationships. But it does not mean I was not.
But that doesn't dictate whether or not you're a lesbian.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you know what I mean when I tell you about how people will sit there and split hairs on it, and something when we met, it was so refreshing that you did not do that.
Yeah, I'm not a gatekeepy lesbian. There are so many gatekeepy lesbians out there that will do that. They'll quiz you. They'll ask you all of these questions. They'll grill you, and I get it from certain perspectives. I dated a lot of bisexual women. The bisexuals that were still hung up on men, in my addiction and whatever, I would date women, and I would run into the issue of and I was cheated on a lot by those women who told me they cared about me, and they just used me as an experiment. And that's something that I can see where certain lesbians who have been used as an experiment would be more inclined to ask those questions. But there's such a distinction on how to go about asking those questions. You don't want to be combative, and you don't want to make the other person that you're questioning or you're asking these inquisitive things to feel like they're being interrogated. If you're trying to protect yourself, and you're trying to protect your peace, and you're trying to protect your heart, there's a way to go about it and say, hey, look, I've been through these experiences. These things have happened. I just want to make sure that I'm not going to have a repeat of what has happened to me before. Like, I can see it from that perspective, but this quizzing, or this like interrogation that I've heard some lesbians do with women really bothers me, and it's not okay. I don't think it's okay. And each person has had their own experiences, and each person has gone through their own fair share of heartbreak and hurt. I have, in my own ways, and I get it if some of them want to question people because they're protecting themselves.
Yeah, but also if they're questioning the wrong kind of girl that's just trying to play games, she's just gonna tell them what they want to hear.
But they'll
most
also,
people aren't gonna be like,
smart,
oh, you're right, I'm just playing you. Like, most people that are manipulative are gonna be manipulative. So them questioning me in that manner isn't really doing what they think it's doing. Like, you kind of have to look at what someone's life looks like. I don't have all these dudes around me. She's observed me before we dated. She can see, like, I'm not just saying, oh, I've decentered men and I've men all around me. Like, I don't have men in my life, really. I have family, but I don't seek male approval in the sense of, I don't have these guy friends. I don't have these men that I'm like, oh, look how cool I am. I don't really interact with men much when it comes to outside of work, outside of family, outside of really necessity, because, and I'm not saying, oh, I can be cordial and they're acquaintances, but I don't have a desire to be close to men. And that's why when she's seen that, I was like, when, like, once we started getting to know each other, she knew I was serious because she had already seen kind of like my lifestyle. And it wasn't the classic, oh, I'm going to date women because it's easier. It was literally, I'd already been changing my life, and I already had been doing those steps before I even started dating women at all. And I didn't really have a long stint of dating. Yeah. But the one that I told you about, yeah, when I rejected her, and I did it very nicely, we just weren't compatible. I knew it. Um, and I couldn't get this one out of my head. But also, like, I didn't know that she would be considering me. So,
that's a whole
well, we can get into that how we met later, but
yeah, that was a whole
but it was all right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hit you. We both didn't. I'm just going to preface this by saying we both had a thing for each other. We just, neither of us really knew it until
because we cared about consent,
lit a fire under my ass.
Yeah,
because I had my own things going on, and I was fearful of my own weird stuff. And yeah, long story short, here we are.
Well, I'll make it really short. You were talking about you were working on yourself. You'd been in therapy. You didn't really seem like you're open to dating, which is fine. And I didn't want to get in the way of all that. I got out of my really crappy relationship, and I thought, okay, I know some people think you really have to take time, but because I had all these patterns repeating, I really wanted to be like, nope, I'm going to date women and really do this thing. But I wasn't looking to seriously date. I was just trying to interrupt the patterns that I had, because in the past I did take breaks in between, and I do think it's healthier to do that. However, I wanted to just date women like casually and just be like get some experience. And I don't even mean it had to be really sexually. Like I was like I need to go on dates. I did feel like I did need some experience in that way, but I wasn't necessarily trying to do that. I was trying to be ethical about it.
The whole time there was this fire that was building underneath both of us, coals under our feet.
Yeah, I went on like a couple dates with someone. I'd talked to them for like a week, went on a date, talked to them for a week, went on a date. Anyways, but then I kindly rejected them, but they were just like, you're gonna go to your ex-boyfriend, aren't you? And it really upset me. And I was like, I get that happens a lot. I said, but one thing I can tell you that I know for sure is I'm not doing that. And I know that people experience people doing that all the time, and I get it, but it was really like an insult. I understand where she's coming from, but I also think it was a cope, because it is hard to get rejected.
Of being,
she didn't want to believe that it could just be incompatibility, because a lot of people do have a scarcity dating mindset. And I don't really mind being single and alone. I just, I'd taken a few months after the last relationship, and I was kind of like, well, I'm just going to gain some experience dating women, and that is what it is. I could have taken longer, but honestly, I wasn't heartbroken. I didn't love my ex like that. And I know it sounds cold, but I had been having more of a like, hey, you need to do this thing. I deep down knew he was the last man that I was going to date. I deep down knew that I was over doing this shit. Okay. Anyway, so I took a few months, did this thing. But yeah, she took it like, oh, you're just going to go back to him. Meanwhile, I never communicating, thinking about him, anything about him. Like certainly that wasn't even happening, but there was nothing I'd said to her to indicate that. But she was simply going off on the patterns she had experienced, putting me in that box, and basically coping with rejection by just being like, you're just going to go back to him. And I'm sure when she retells the story, I'm just another bisexual that did this. So,
long story short,
I think you seeing that I was serious though, and actually my life was aligning what I was telling you over time.
That wasn't.
It was good for you to see, but it wasn't everything.
That wasn't the deciding factor by any means. You came to me and asked me for advice on things, and that's where it started. That's where the fire started lighting under my own ass, because I was so fearful of things, and I was fearful of fucking things up because I was still in my healing process. And I was like, no, 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 I have to listen. My guts are telling me, my therapist is telling me, I need to do the thing, because if I don't, I'm gonna fucking hate myself. I'm gonna regret it. And I have had feelings very strongly for you that whole fucking
I know.
time. So, and yeah. So
timing is important.
Yes.
And when we first
Timing, it
met,
was
the
perfect.
timing wasn't there. And it
Yeah.
made us really get to know each other on a deep level over time and build that trust.
Yeah.
And I don't trust easily. And so it was good that it took time.
Yeah. And we were best friends first, which is good, and my thing was, when things started coming to a head with us, I am very proud of myself for growing out of my comfort zone and where I was by telling you that, hey, like, I'm afraid this is gonna, everything that you've been talking about sounds like everything that you want sounds exactly like who I am, but I don't want to ruin the friendship.
I was like,
oh my God,
girl, the friendship is already ruined. If I'm like fantasizing about you, I want more, and I'm not having more, so that's miserable, and I don't want to keep doing
Fast
that.
forward a few days,
I didn't say it in that way though. I was just like, hey, it won't ruin it. That we don't have to lose. Like, we still have that foundation.
Yeah.
But now we can actually act on that spark, and it did feel healthy in the fact that it was a slow burn, but I don't believe in slow burns without attraction. I do think you do need that, and we did have that, but we were respectful of each other.
Yes, and that's a whole thing too, and connection is really important on multiple levels, and we connect on, we can tick all of each other's boxes.
Yeah.
And it was another situation where it was like, when it was just like,
it was definitely
found our person, and it took a lot of growth in a span of August, March,
and
over 7-8 months. We grew a lot as people in that time, and I was going through my own stuff, coming out of getting out of my own, having to overcome my own fears and my own shit, while you were coming into yourself and who you were, and saying, enough is enough, I'm not going to repeat these cycles anymore. We both were going, we were going like this to come like this. We kind of had to, there was this, we were walking like this, there was a fork in the road, and I went this way, you went this way for a little bit, and then we both came like this.
Yeah.
And that's how it happens sometimes, and it's not bad to grow as individuals, to grow together.
Yeah. Oh, and I want to make the distinction, like when I was talking about the other person earlier, I didn't mean when if it's destiny to be with that person. It's just, for me,
I knew what you meant in that moment. Like, you knew that you were.
I knew that it clicked. Yeah. As far as the feelings were there, like I was trying to explain before, I always felt like there's something missing, but I didn't have language for it. I couldn't articulate it. Lesbian, and with her, and with her, that came together. And
I knew that.
I'm older now than I was back then, and it's like, when I had that moment of like knowing with you, it was in a deeper level, but it clicked in that way of like, oh, like I felt a deeper connection. But it feels good when like you have that realization, and it's like, oh, these things that we're missing, you can have them. Like, I always felt before when I was dating men, I had to be like, well, there's a lot that's missing here, but hey, look over here. Oh, look over here. Dating is really atrocious these days, and it does groom women to settle for, well, in my case, I would read a lot of and hear a lot of horror stories of men's abuse, etc. In my first relationship, I dealt with, I won't get into detail, but it was going down that way, and I left, thank God. However, later on, I was like, I will never deal with that again, whatever, whatever. Um, so I would really, in my relationships, there's this sense, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this, because there's this sense in hetero dating that if he is not active, like if he's not hurting you, if he's like basically the bar's in hell, and if all these things, then you should be fortunate and you should stay. And in my relationships, it would be like they were treating me well. I mean, it did degrade over time, but even in the degrading, they didn't like hurt me. I wouldn't, I'm just going to leave and never tell them. That's how I roll. But it's easy to be that way when you're like a lesbian. You don't really love them, no. So I don't want to say I'm better than women that don't, because I'm not, I don't think we should shame people. However, yeah, turns out if you're lesbian, it's pretty easy to fucking go. But anyways, but it came to a point where it's like, oh, they're not doing these egregious things, therefore, and it's like, no, just no. There was so much missing. And it was like, oh my God, oh, I can actually feel fulfilled. I don't have to sit here and say, well, the bag is mostly empty, but there's a couple things in here, so I guess we got to roll with this. And it's like, no, I mean, no matter who you're dating, what community you're in, let's not do that, right? But yeah. So this was very long and a little unhinged, but I guess aren't all coming out stories.
Yeah.
We bounced around a little bit. Hopefully it wasn't crazy confusing. We both have such different stories, but there's that parallel of the bisexual thing of to cope, to appease family, to think you're having some form of safety, in this society, and in how we are programmed and influenced and brainwashed as well. And there's a parallel of the family members feeling ashamed of us, holding that over our head. In some ways, I'm still in the thick of things, and it's really tough when
I did want to say things now, just so you know, things are a lot better now with my mom and I on that regard with being gay. I did want to preface that.
Yeah.
She's completely like, it's all good in the hood with that at this point. It was just a long road to get to that point. And she's still kind of confused on things, and I have to correct her sometimes, but she's very accepting of Em and I, and she really likes Em and all of that.
Yeah, we get along, and
and
we
that's
haven't
really
gotten to
important
spend
for me.
extended time, but we've had a little time here and there, and it's still, I mean, it's still, I still have to get to know her more, but I mean, it's been good energy every time, and she will engage with me and ask me things and cares to get to know me, and
comes up to you when she sees you.
Yeah, when she sees me, like run into her in the store and gives me a hug, and so that is a good thing. And it is tough with family. There's some people that believe in cutting family off, and I am someone that does believe in that. If I do believe if you have to, if you need to, and also it doesn't have to be indefinite. You can take some space, and but it doesn't mean it has to be forever. I do think the main factor is, are they growing? Are they willing to, learn and grow and change? There are people that are not. And so that's a different story. I do think, if someone is actively improved and in that way, then that's different. I really feel a lot of things right now are pretty uncertain for me, and we'll have to find out, I guess. And I have family that's come out and saw the chaos of that, which is a big reason that kept me from. I'm more of a private person in general when it comes to that, but um, I would hide behind that a lot and be like, well, I'm just private in general, which I am, but I was kicking the can. And, I would tell myself, well, you're bi and you just haven't had a girlfriend yet. So, I mean, come out when that comes out, when that happens. I knew deep down it inevitably would, as I always knew it needed to happen. I had to. But I didn't expect it to take this long, and so there's going to be a lot of confusion and probably ignorance, and some terrible things are going to happen. I feel this looming doom. But there's family that does know me as, or I had come out to them as bisexual. There's some siblings, and they're cool with it. They've met her, but there's not a lot of them, and that know, I would say,
Well, and
a handful.
I still think
But I have a big family, so
you do need to tell those siblings. Well, there are a couple that know that you're a lesbian, right? Or do
they just see me as bisexual, I guess.
I
have said, well, after dating a woman, like this feels right, and that I have told them, like, yeah, I'm realizing that I didn't really, like, there's always something missing, and dating a woman, it's clicked for me. To me, that's basically telling them without spelling it out. But they've referenced my sexuality since, so I just leave it.
I think it would be, I understand that, but I think that it would be beneficial for you down the line to erase bisexuality from anyone's mind completely.
Yeah.
Because that's going to get to a point to where that's going to become heavy on you. And it's going to weigh on you. That bisexuality needs to go bye-bye because you don't identify with
bye-bye.
you don't identify with that anymore.
No, because it just suggests the connection to men that I never felt.
And you're trying
really,
to distance yourself from that.
Yeah.
So I think it would be beneficial whenever. Of course, you know me, I'm patient. I'm not going to, that's a you thing that you're going to, that's something that you're going to have to do when you're ready to do. But I really think it would be good for you to erase bisexuality from anyone's mind.
I just feel like at some point, some people just refuse to change, because me literally saying, oh, now that I have a girlfriend, I realize that, like, I like women. How is that not telling them that without just being like, oh, I'm a lesbian?
Because they're still having that in their brain that you could, you and I could split, which I don't remember. Anyway, you and I could split and you go right back to men.
But we're not going to, so it's irrelevant to me.
I know, but I'm still concerned that it's going to come up later on, and it's going to make you feel, I'm concerned about you and how you feel. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm concerned about you and how you feel. Take me out of the equation.
I think it's not really going to come up as we're together. Like, if there's this thought in their head that, oh, perhaps, whatever, it doesn't matter, because just with us being together, that's going to sort itself out in my mind.
I can understand your thoughts and your thought process on it. I see that. And I see that it's like, for you, it's like it's easier for you to rest in that.
It's just coming out multiple times is a fucking lot, and I'm over it. I literally have not come out once to some of them, and it's just kind of.
I know that because I had to do that too. I had to do that too, but it wasn't. It completely and utterly absolved me from having anything to do with men. And it was
Yes.
freeing for me to say, I am a lesbian, to my mother,
Right.
the person who made me feel like I had to be someone I wasn't. It was freeing. That's where I'm going with that, is that it is so fucking freeing to finally tell these fucking people I am a lesbian. Bisexuality doesn't exist. And I was never in that category.
But I've had such
You
different
know.
relationships that they're just not going to believe it. Like, I've had 2-year relationships with men, a year or two, or what, scattered about, and they are just not going to believe it. And I just don't care to sit there and answer a million questions.
Well, all in all,
so I'm trying to.
You don't have
basically,
to.
I'm trying to figure it out. This is
Yeah.
us, literally in
Yeah.
real time, workshopping it, because I have
Right.
thought about
And it's
what
not,
to do with
you
that.
know,
But
and it's not a negative thing to have a conversation about. It's just I love you. I care about you. I care about your feelings. I care about how the things that we have talked about externally from this.
but I
Just
also think
different
that
different things. I just want you to fully feel like you. I don't want
Yeah.
I don't want things to come up later to where you don't feel like, you regret certain things. You regret not saying, "Hey, look, this is who I fully am."
But I'm
And
not like that
not-
with my family
Yeah.
anyways. I feel like you and your mom, even though it was dysfunctional, you both are so much closer. There's a lot of emotional distance with me and my family members that
Well,
it's not the same.
yeah. Well, even
I don't feel
when
I can be fully myself with most of my family in general.
Yeah.
And
I guess
I'm not unique in that when it comes to ex-Mormon experiences.
no. I'm not discrediting.
so-
I'm not discounting or discrediting.
It
that
would
by
almost
any
be strange
means.
for me to just so fully be like transparent in the way of,
But-
now I need to come out again, because I mean, if they don't care so much about the distinction, yes, I get it. You are thinking about me, you're thinking about my feelings, but in some ways I am more private in these things
and
than you are.
That's respectful.
And in some ways I'm just trying to weigh out, I need to come out to the ones I haven't come out to at all first. If down the line I feel like it matters, then I will. But honestly,
I really
us
don't.
dating and might sort out the rest regardless, because they're going to see I'm not dating men anyway. So
Yes. Yeah. And mind you, I came fully into myself and came out for a second time as a full blown lesbian when my mom and I were not in a good place either. We weren't in a bad place, but we weren't in a good place.
I'm not claiming by closeness that you've been in good places. I mean that you two are, hold on, like you two are more transparent emotionally, even when it's bad.
Yeah.
Even when it's bad, you're expressing.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
My family will withhold regardless. So it's hard to, I'm not in any ways, I know how messy when you talk about things, and I know that it was not on good terms. It's like, I remember that about when you explained it to me. However, you both were expressing. And when there's a family where people do not express things like this, there's an absence, even in the negative realm. Like, it's really, I'm just really trying to think of the best way for my mental health. And both roads lead to pain, and both roads lead to distress. And I'm at the moment processing which avenue to take.
Yes.
Yes.
And I respect that, and I understand that, and I have respected that and understood that. And
I mean, even the family you've met, even the family that I'm close to, there has always been a distance.
Yes. There's been that arm's length kind of thing. And I respect that, and I understand.
And some of them I'm getting closer to, but I moved here 2 years ago. Wait, is it 3 now? Anyways, a few years ago, I think it's been 3, maybe. But I had been away from all of them for years, and this is why I'm kicking myself, because like I should have done this when I was out there. But we cannot, like I said, I was explaining why I was processing those other things, and that was the way it had to happen. But it's annoying now that I'm like, I mean, well, when I was out there, that was the time that I came out as bisexual to those family members. So it's like I did do some work at that time too. Because, you know, I hadn't even told them anything. So that was a step. And now it gets complicated when some of your family knows at least that you're bisexual, but in a relationship with a woman, some of them don't know. And it's just like someone could out me at any time. That's an anxietal thought, but also in some ways I'm like, well, my cope for that is just kind of like, well, if they do, that does the heavy lifting for me and they can gossip behind my back.
Yeah.
In a way. I thought about, oh, we'll just come out on Facebook as a couple and they can all fucking talk and that'll make the rounds. I mean, is that a cowardly way to do it? Maybe.
No.
But at this
No,
point,
you have
I
to
don't
do
know.
it in whatever way you need to do it for yourself. And like I told you, take me out of the equation. You know, even though I'm a very big part of the equation, still, like I'm patient. I'm patient to a fault. Which is good.
That doesn't
Patience
mean I'm
is
gonna
important.
just sit on this forever.
No,
I'm just trying to.
But I am never going to make you feel rushed or make you feel like, oh, you have to do this. Again, another thing that lesbians do is, you know, is the instant a woman expresses like, hey, you know, this is what's going on with my family, they'll go,
yeah.
Which, you know, I've had experiences with relationships with other women that I was a secret for 10 years. And sure, yeah, it got to a point where that was upsetting for me because,
well, I think being a secret in general is, you know,
that's something that I'm not okay with. That's something where I draw a boundary, is that I won't be a secret, because it's a miserable existence to be someone's little secret that they hide in the closet, per se. You know, I won't. Yeah. I won't allow myself to go through that. But I don't feel by any means like that at all. And you know, I understand you fully.
I'm doing this in spurts, not all at once. Yeah. And so that's where it's kind of, you know, it's a little messy. Yeah, you have to take baby steps. If I got outed, I'm not going to deny it, or, you know, I'll be like, yep. Yeah. So, but mostly it's parents, mostly it's siblings that don't live here, and I'm not close to them anyways. And so, yeah, you know, I don't talk to them about a lot of things, so that's going to be awkward. Yeah, and
all of it comes in time. Yeah. All of it comes in time. It's baby steps. It's just
and the steps that you're taking. Before, my parents did not live in the same area, so this will give a little context too. It's not like they've been there this whole time, and they moved here like about a year ago, and so now, yeah, this is a lot more of a reality because I was just kind of living my life. And now that they're here, it's like, oh, like I haven't come out to them. And so now it's kind of like, shit.
I think our brains are...
Well, we're going to get going, but yeah, this was long. If you're still here, put an emoji in the chat, like put a rainbow or something gay in there to indicate, I don't know.
Hanging out and listening to our stories and listen to us banter about everything, you know.
Meet the host, like, hey. Survive. If you've survived this, then you might. But a lot more of them will be a little more like answering the stuff. Obviously, we will talk about experiences, but this is kind of a, I guess, meet the host.
Yeah, I think this was important. You know, I think it was important. We
had a lot of really good shit to say.
Yeah,
lore drop.
Hey, maybe sharing our experiences can very well help other people. that have been going through similar experiences or have felt this way, and who have been, going through that phase of questioning themselves.
Yeah.
And not knowing, and just hearing. By the way, coming out isn't always as terrifying. Our stories just kind of
Happen to be.
And
yeah.
But thank you for hanging out with us and listening. And hopefully we could help people. Hopefully people will find this, and it'll help them in their own journey of just not being afraid of being who they are, and just knowing that there's no shame in life, in the way that life works. And all that matters is you make the right decisions for you, and you become, and you use it as a tool to become a better person.
Also, go with your gut. Like,
that too.
If you're gay, if you have to keep testing it, questioning it, you know what straight people don't do? They don't do that.
Yeah.
Then I wish someone would have told me that.
Yeah, no straight person does that.
If you're beta testing, like
Yeah.
maybe you got to figure out, where are you on the spectrum, but you're definitely not straight if you're doing that. So.
But yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be back soon.
Mhm.
This was fun, and I do want to say this is why we're called Saphic Unplugged. I mean, the computer is plugged in, but what we mean by unplugged is like, this isn't scripted. We don't have a team. It's just us. And so if we do have a little, this is more of a raw, old school YouTube style of like, we're talking, we're chatting, we're cutting it up. And so, if there's a tangent or a thing or whatever, there's something a little random. It's like, this is how connection
this is real life
is formed,
Yeah,
and
this is 100%.
hopefully it's relatable to people.
Yeah.
And I do, when I'm looking for things to watch, sometimes I do see now a lot of it's curated and a lot of it is very buttoned up. And I know that has appealed to some people, but I do think, in the gay community, it's like a lot of us have like such stories that have a lot of depth and a lot of, there's a lot of uniqueness, but there's also a lot of parallels and relatable things with each story. I've even stories where I didn't have as much as in common with the person, there's still parallels to draw in the sense of, gay experiences and lesbian experiences and things like that.
Yeah.
And there's always something like that I take value to. I mean, I've heard of stories of, lesbians dating in LA that had so much accessibility where it was so different, but also I'm like, oh, it was valuable to hear their stories and hear their experiences. And there's people that were raised secular but still had hurdles to overcome and jump through, and even our society, is so straight,
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you for watching.
Thank you.
And we should be back next week. I got a scary dental thing tomorrow, but by next week I should be healed up and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.